Todd Caponi.
What's up?
Oh my good Lord. Do you know, I have to just say a couple of things here. Rajiv's session, he touched upon points that anybody who's spoken with me knows I'm always banging on about: discovery, knowing your customer, and intrinsic and extrinsic motivations. And it takes most human beings, sales professionals who are doing business development, a lot of courage to even try to dig into what are the motivations of their buyer. But interestingly, I came across the concept of transparency. My gosh, hold on a second. I need to be transparent about what I don't do so well, about my vulnerabilities, about what my company doesn't do. When I read your book, Todd, it blew my mind. Todd Caponi is the author of two amazing bestsellers. Please, you've got to grab your copy. It's The Transparency Sale and The Transparent Sales Leader. I have not in 20, I'm not going to say how many years, how many decades. Okay, let's leave that bit out. I have never heard of someone completely open up the playing field into sales approach, into how I initiate a sales conversation, and indeed advance it all the way through to closing, and even after that with transparency. Todd, you wrote the book. I've given you a very little introduction there. I hope everybody here connects with you. Grab your book. You can find it in the virtual village as well. It's there. You can connect and purchase the book there as well. It's such a great reading. Todd, I want to shut up and let you just kind of open up the stage, please. What is this? What the heck is this transparency thing for our listeners out there?
Gosh, that's a tear rolling down my cheek. That is a beautiful intro. And I'm sure Raj was really boring, right? Because he's so there's so much energy. It's fantastic. So thank you. And thank you for having me. For everybody who's on, welcome to my home. First of all, I know we're not on a stage, but if you've got something to say, throw it in the chat, make a comment, ask a question. This is meant to be fun. I'm the opening act after Raj, but before Raj's hip hop close, it's awesome. I've seen it live a couple of times, and your face will be hurting from laughter. It is fantastic. But what we're going to talk about today is we're going to get a little nerdy. All right. And I hope that word translates well, but I want to take you through a little bit around the behavioral science of how we as human beings engage and prioritize and decide, and then ultimately trigger a purchase decision. Now, wouldn't that be helpful for anybody that has to influence anyone to do anything? So whether you're thinking about this from a sales perspective or just in general, I want you to relate with something first, okay? It's a little story from my last role. So Helga didn't take you through my whole background and everything, but I've been in sales leadership for quite a while. My last role, I was the chief revenue officer of a company. I'm in Chicago, by the way, where it's a little chillier than it is in Lisbon, for example. I'm wearing a sweater today, but I was in Chicago. I was the chief revenue officer of a company called Power Reviews. You probably guessed from the name, we were in the reviews space, right? We helped retailers and brands collect and display ratings and reviews on their websites. So if you are on a retailer website, you're looking at a product, and you scroll down and there's reviews, it might have been us. We helped 1,000 retailers and brands like Crocs and Vineyard Vines and tons of other ones, Tesco in Europe, we did a bunch. Here's what happened. We did a research study with a local university called Northwestern University on just buyer behavior. So when a website is acting as a salesperson, what happens? The research came back, and when it did, it changed my life could only happen to a massive nerd like me. 3 data points, 2 of which blew my mind. And I thought, holy crap. And again, this is when a website is acting as a salesperson. I'm going to make the connection for you on how a human acting as a salesperson does the same thing in a business to business type setting. But here's the story. The 3 data points around when a website is acting as a salesperson. Number 1, didn't change my life. This idea that we all read reviews today, right? At the time, it was 96% of us will read a review when we're buying something we haven't bought before that's of medium to high consideration, meaning it's not like a pack of gum or a gallon of milk. It's like something meaningful. You will read reviews if you haven't bought it before. Here's the 2 data points that changed my life. You ready? All right, number 1, 85% of us go to the negative reviews first. Is that you? Like you skip the 5 stars and you go right to the 4, 3, 2, and 1 star reviews, right? It was 85% of us, and I'd argue it's higher than that. Like I haven't found a whole lot of people that don't. Here's the other data point. When a product on a 5-star scale has an average review score between a 4.2 and a 4.5, that is optimal for purchase conversion, meaning that a product that has negative reviews right under it actually helps the product sell more. A product that has an average of a 4.2 will sell better than a product that has nothing but 5-star reviews. As a matter of fact, a product that's got nothing but 5-star reviews sells at about the same rate as a product that has an average review score of a 3.2. So I'm looking at this like the nerd that I am going, wait a second. All right, why, when a website's acting as a salesperson, do we need the negative first? Like, why do we want the negative first? All right, and why are there companies like Amazon? You might have heard of them. They're pretty big, like check them out. I'm joking. Amazon, they were the first back in 1995 to say, hey, listen, buy from us. And when you're done, come back and tell us what you think. And we're going to list it right under the product. Even if it sucks, go ahead, rip on it. And they've done pretty well, right? Why? Why does that happen on a website? But more importantly, why does it happen in human to human selling, or does it? And the answer was emphatically that it does. Our brains, all of your brains, you're wired subconsciously to know that perfection does not exist. And until you get to that downside, the risk, what you give up, the brain is unable to process all the goodness. As it turns out, transparency sells better than pretending to be perfect. It also retains customers better. It grows customers better. It creates advocates better. It leads better. It is the closest thing to a magic bullet in the selling world that I've ever found. It's this idea of embracing what you give up to be great at your core. All right. So with that in mind, I'm fresh on it, right? I start trying it with customers. And what I mean by trying it, meaning leading with like something we give up to be great at our core. Leading with, hey, you're looking at this competitor. Hey, here's something that they're better than us at. And if that's going to be important, can we talk through that up front? We started doing these type of things. Magic happened. Like literally sales cycles sped way up. Win rates went way up, meaning partially because we were qualifying in opportunities that we should be working on better, but partially because we were losing the deals we were going to lose anyway faster. That was amazing, because when you think about your most precious inventory, all of you in any revenue capacity, your most precious inventory that you are able to turn into revenue is not your products and your services, it's your time. And if you're losing slowly, you're wasting inventory. And so you get to be much more efficient. And then the fun side effect is you get to make it really hard on your competitors to message against you when you're the one that's doing the homework for the buyer. All right, so this magic starts happening. We became Chicago's fastest growing technology company from 2014 to 2017 doing this. All right, so I get to the point, I'm like, holy crap, this is amazing. I have to get these ideas out there. And so like a lunatic, I quit my job and I wrote a book. All right. So quit my job. The market here finds out that, hey, Todd's on the market. So I start getting calls from people recruiting me to be a chief revenue officer at other companies. Like, I'm blessed. Fantastic. One of the guys calls me and he's like, Todd, listen, I've got this great job for you. CRO role, fast growing tech company. They're going to sell in the next 2 years, and then go write your book. Think of the stories you'll have. And I'm like, Andy, it's not a memoir. It has to be written right now. All right. And what do I mean by that? As it turns out, and I think Helga knows this about me, like when cool people are doing cool things on the weekends, you might find me reading old magazines and books on sales from the late 1800s and early 1900s. Like I am like a sales history nerd of the highest order. I actually just found a book from 1726 called The Complete English Tradesman. It's a sales book from 1726. It has a whole chapter on being honest. We've always known that honesty and transparency sells better. All right, we have, like, there's no shock in that. There shouldn't be any surprise in that. However, today we have to do it. All right, we've finally gotten to the point in our society that the proliferation of reviews and feedback on everything you do, buy, and experience means that you can no longer hide the truth and expect to get away with it. We've got to embrace what we give up to be great at our core, and we got to do it now. All right, so if I haven't convinced you yet, let me take you on a journey with a couple of examples. All right, I'm going to start with a B2C, business to consumer example that is probably relatable to you. And then I'm going to tell you a B2B story. All right, you ready? We good? Cool. Let's go to everyone's favorite retailer in the whole world, IKEA. Wait, not your favorite? That's surprising. It does. It sucks, right? IKEA is the #1 furniture retailer in the world for 14 straight years. And the experience isn't very good. And every day you walk into an IKEA, and I know I've got a picture here from there's one in Lisbon, just outside of Lisbon. Every time you walk into the store, you know what you're in for, right? I mean, when you walk into a store and they have to give you a map, you know, this is going to be a nightmare. Like, I need a map to walk around the store. And then they purposely walk you down curvy aisles with high walls so you can't figure out where you're going. Like, they purposely make sure that you're picking up things along the way and seeing other ideas when you're trying to go to your destination. You find, let's say it's bedroom furniture. You look around, there's no salesperson to help you out, right? You have to write down the code of where it's going to be located in the warehouse, or take a picture of it with your phone, because you get to go down to the warehouse yourself and pack the 100-pound, these giant boxes off of these shelves onto a cart that doesn't have brakes, which seems like a huge oversight to me. Like, why not put a brake on the cart? Like, I don't know if you've ever experienced the box on the cart as the cart's rolling away. Like, it's keeping the back doctors, physical therapists, and chiropractors in business. So you finally get it on the cart, you wheel it out to the parking lot. And if you're ever looking for something fun to do on a weekend, sit in the parking lot with a cooler and like bet the over under on how many times newlyweds swear at each other as they're trying to put boxes into the back of their hatchbacks. Like, that's a fun little exciting activity for you to do. You get in your car, you start driving home thinking, I left all that hell on earth back at the store, and I've got a souvenir injury or two to remember my experience. You get home and you're like, all right, cool. You open the box and there's these 150 parts and no words on the work instructions other than the word Svarta or whatever Scandinavian brand name that they came up with. That's, I don't know what those things are. You swear your way through the assembly, right? like, like it's a big, my wife is always laughing when I'm putting together IKEA furniture because she's like, he must almost be done. He just hurt his thumb. I finally get done, and you get that little rush. You're just like, huh, that looks pretty good. You know, honey, we should have bought the end tables with this set. Let's go back. What? Like it was just a nightmare. Who wants to go back? But the point that I'm making here is that the most successful brands in the world, IKEA, the #1 furniture retailer in the world for 14 straight years. And I just described the experience to a T, didn't I? It happens to all of you. And we know it, and we go back because they tell the world and they brand what they give up to be great at their core. We say, you're going to have to find it. You're going to have to write it down. You're going to have to pull it onto shelves. You're going to have to jam it in the back of your car. You're going to have to drive it home and assemble it. But we do that so that we can give you modern Scandinavian design furniture that you didn't pay much for. Oh, and the Swedish meatballs upstairs are fantastic too. So don't miss those. But the point being that we see that with lots of brands, lots of B2C does a fantastic job of embracing what they give up to be great at their core. And when you walk into an IKEA, you know what you're getting. When you walk out, you're not surprised by the experience and you're not even disappointed. And it was a nightmare. All right. So let's take that to the B2B world. Okay. So I want to explain, like, how are you going to do this? Because that was B2C. You get it. You see it with lots of brands. And I encourage you to think about that. In the B2B world, how did we do it at Power Reviews, for example? So I was fresh on all this research. I live in Chicago. I had 2 days of meetings scheduled in New York. All right. So again, as a chief revenue officer, I woke up in the morning really early, flew to New York. I had an afternoon meeting scheduled from like 1 to 4 in Manhattan, right in the heart of New York. And then I had a dinner and then a meeting the next morning, and I was going to fly back. So the morning, I get on the plane, fly there. It was before like internet on the plane was any good. So I don't think I had it. I land, I turn on my phone. Sure enough, the first email is, Todd, bad news. We have to cancel the afternoon meeting. Something has come up. We're going to have to reschedule it. Like, oh, good. I got up at 4 in the morning and just flew to New York for this. And now I have the whole afternoon open, which in New York, if you're ever over this way, Manhattan in the summer, not a bad place to be stranded, but it's cool. So I grab a taxi and I'm going to go head into Manhattan, find a coffee shop before I can check into the hotel and just get some work done. Just then, I get a text from my vice president of sales back here in Chicago. Todd, incredible news. We just got an inbound lead from an incredible apparel company, apparel brand. It's Calvin Klein. I'm sure you're all familiar with Calvin Klein. Like, oh, that's a great lead for us. So instead of texting him back, I called them and I was just like, hey, tell me about the lead. What happened? What's going on? So my VP's name was Lance. He's like, oh, the lead came in this morning. The rep reached out. They're going to issue an RFP, request for proposal. Yay! Like everybody loves RFPs, right? No. And then based on that, they were going to have us fly to New York and do the full presentation and all the dog and pony show and all that. And I was like, New York? I forgot they're in New York. I know this is a 1 in 50 shot, Lance, so don't put any pressure on the rep. But could you have the rep reach back out to their head of e-commerce and let them know that I'm in town and I just had a meeting cancel. And if he wants to grab coffee to kind of kick this thing off, that would be kind of cool. Like, all right, I'll do it. So Lance has the rep reach out to the guy. Here's where things get crazy. The guy says yes. So the 1 in 50 hits. So I head on over to Calvin Klein's headquarters in Manhattan. It's a beautiful building. It's a little creepy on the inside. Like all the walls have pictures of people in their underwear because it's Calvin Klein. It's just kind of a weird vibe for a business, but okay, cool. So I check in. I go up to the elevators on the 4th floor. He meets me. One thing about New York, this is not a bad thing, but a lot of times in the business world, New Yorkers are all about business, right? It's like, let's just get to it. So this guy meets me at the elevators. He kind of like, nice to meet you. So we walk back to his office. The first thing he says in his office is, Todd, here's the HDMI cable for your laptop to plug into our monitor for your presentation. What? My presentation, right? So my wheels start turning, and I'm like, what expectation was set? Am I supposed to be giving a presentation? The lead just came in 3 hours ago. So as the wheels are turning, and I'm trying to figure out like what's happening here, it gets worse, believe it or not. I look to my right. People are wheeling chairs into the office. It's a small Manhattan office, 7 people jammed into it. So it's the head of e-commerce, these 7 people and me, and we're in this like elbow to elbow sitting around his desk. And on the monitor is my computer screen, but I didn't have it. Like I didn't have a presentation. I'm a chief revenue officer. I didn't have a presentation. What am I supposed to do? It gets worse. Let's keep going. So everybody's looking at me. Everybody's like, there's no small talk or anything. And they're like, Todd, listen, we've started this evaluation. We're looking at you. We're looking at your competitor. How are you better? All right. So first question, how are you better than your competitors? And you can see everybody's arms kind of go up like, all right, here comes the sales pitch, right? Like I'm ready. My BS meter is flying. So I did something different. Now, all of this research was fresh in my head, right? And I had a theory. So I decided to try it. And I started with this. Again, his question was, how are you better than your competitor? I said, hey, do you mind if I start with how they're better than us? And I know that sounds crazy, but they just released an add-on to their core technology that not only do we not have, but we hadn't even considered it, right? It's not on our roadmap anywhere. And if that's going to be an important consideration on your journey, can we talk about that now? Because you got 7 people here that are about to write an RFP. We've got a team that would have to respond to it. We would have to fly my team here to New York for the, like, if that's going to be important, let's vet that out now and part as friends. And they're all like, what are you talking about, Todd? Like, we hadn't even heard about it. Like, all right, cool. I go in and I pitched the add-on from our competitor as though I work there. All right. I literally was like, here's what it does. Here's how it works. From their press release, here's the metrics around it. And their first customer is another apparel company. It was the Gap, right? So they start talking about it and they're just like, hey, no, we hadn't considered that, but it's interesting. What would Power Reviews do if we wanted something like that? I'm like, I don't know. They just announced it yesterday, right? I haven't even talked to my product team. But I would guess this is what we would do, right? And I explained how you can integrate into the solution. And they're like, all right, Todd, well, it's not on our roadmap either. Like we hadn't considered it. If we do, it's probably a couple of years down the road. I'm like, are you sure? All right. Like, are you sure? Like, yes, we are sure. Like, all right, cool. This is why it's not on a roadmap. This is what we're great at, right? And I go into our conversation about what our core is. 10 minutes later, maybe 15 minutes later, this head of e-commerce stands up and he's like, hey, have you all heard enough? And they're like, yeah, we're good. We're good. We're cool. They all get up and leave. All right. So this is 15, 20 minutes into the conversation where the whole vibe had changed. It went from New York, vendor, customer, to 9 people sitting around a table trying to figure out how we're going to optimize all of our time, right? It was a partnership instead of vendor customer. The whole vibe changed. Those 7 people leave. It's just me and him. He grabs a folder from his credenza, opens it up, and it says e-commerce budget, like 5th line down, ratings and review software. He's like, can you hit that number? Now, I've been doing this a long time. I'm aging like guacamole over here, but I never had a customer show me their actual budget 10 minutes into a relationship, the first time I embraced transparency. Like what just happened? So I leave. All right. I leave a few minutes later. 10 days later, I'm back in my office in Chicago. I'm in a meeting in my office, phone rings, caller ID says Calvin Klein. I'm like, I got to get this. Hello. It's him to tell me that they have decided not to do the RFP, not to fly anybody around, and they're just going to go ahead and move forward with us. And that the call before this one was to the competitors to let them know, and they immediately went into a pitch for their new add-on and said, Power Reviews doesn't have it. This is what it does. And he's like, whoa. We already know all about that, right? Power Reviews' chief revenue officer already told us all about it. And they're like, what? Here's the thing. You might think that was bold, right? Like when you just think about what you do now, for me to actually pitch a competitor's differentiator in the first 5 minutes, that sounds bold, doesn't it? I actually think it's the opposite of bold. I think it's more bold not to do it. And here's why. Number one, would you rather they find out now or after you just invested 3 months in them? I would think you would want to find that out now. Number two, would you rather they hear it from the competitor or from you where you could control the message? I would think you'd want to have it come from you, wouldn't you? And the trust that's built when you do that goes through the roof. With every interaction, you are either building trust or eroding it. It's never staying the same. Start on top, right? Start above ground, not underground. And it has magical impacts on everything you do. I want you to think about this stat for a second. Hope you like that I'm appearing inside the chart. I thought that was a cool little feature.
I love that. Not even I've done that.
That's right.
Awesome.
Hello from the inside of a circle. So this is a data point from a 2017 study by the Corporate Executive Board, which is now Gartner. They looked at, in a consensus purchase, meaning multiple buyers. All right, so you've got to sell to multiple stakeholders in the company. Where do they spend their time? Now, I wasn't a math major or anything, but the 22 plus the 17, 39. They only spend 39% of their time during an evaluation talking to you, talking to your competitor, or talking to their internal buying group. The other 61% is doing other stuff. And what's that other stuff? It's back channeling you. 61% of their time is checking references, talking to peers, finding other companies that have experience with your solutions. If there's analysts that are associated with your solution, they're looking at that. They're doing a Google search. Have you Google searched your own company, right? Like Google search your own company, like my company reviews, see what comes up, because your buyers are doing that. You should be reading those weekly. Yelp, Glassdoor, Glassdoor is a site for employees and former employees to rate and review what it's like to work there. Your buyers are looking at that. Why? Because when they buy your solution, they're not just buying the solution, they're buying you and the people. If the people hate it there, they don't want to buy that. That's your homework, to go cull all of that information, understand what is a buyer going to find. Because here's a quote that I want you to remember. We as human beings don't buy when we're convinced. All right. If we do, we're probably angry about it 20 minutes later. We buy when we can predict. We as human beings, we're prediction machines. That's why we need the negative first, right? That's why we go to the negative first, because we need to predict whether the juice is going to be worth the squeeze, whether the investment in our time, our resources, and our dollars is going to be worth the reward that comes out on the back end. And when I'm saying this, I don't want you to think, hey, you know what? Next time I get into a sales engagement, or like I'm doing a pitch or something, I should start with, hey, everybody, this is why we suck. Like, no, take it easy. I want you to use a term that was coined by a supermodel. Because, like, why wouldn't we, right? Supermodels. Tyra Banks, you might be familiar with Tyra. Yes, Tyra. So that she is a supermodel turned like business mogul, and she's built a whole empire around this idea of embracing your flawsome. Flawsome, meaning to embrace your flaws, but know that you are still awesome. And it takes us back to that first data point, the 4.2 to 4.5. You're not perfect. When you position your solutions as between a 4.2 to 4.5 or as flawsome, you become endearing to the person that you're selling to. You help them predict, and you qualify in faster and qualify out faster. Like, I would strongly encourage you to just spend some time when we're done here going, all right, what do we as an organization with our products, our services, our technology, whatever it is you sell, what are we giving up to be great at our core? And then what is our great core? And as one of my favorite authors from one of these old books, it's a guy named Arthur Dunn, 1919. It's my favorite quote of sales of all time. It's, if the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. All right. If the truth won't sell it, don't sell it. So figure out what your truth is. What are you giving up to be great at your core? And what is that core? Do the homework. Go search the sites. Act like a buyer. Find out what they're going to learn about your solutions. How are your competitors messaging against you? And are they right? Because if they are, embrace that. You end up disarming their ability to position against you and build trust over you. So spend the time to do that. All right. So with that, Helga, I'm gonna take a deep breath here, and we can engage the audience if you'd like. Whatever we want to do. I wanted to leave a good 10 minutes here at the end, but the things that I want all of you to think about. Number one is transparency sells better than perfection. All right, like soak that in. And you know it. The next time you go online to buy something and you go to the negative reviews first, go, oh, that's right. That's how I'm wired. The people I'm selling to happen to be human beings too. That's how they're wired. And you got to do it anyway, because the proliferation of reviews and feedback on everything we do, buy, and experience means you've got an incredible opportunity to do the homework for the buyer. All right. That's what I mean. That 61% that I shared with you in that data study that Gartner did. That's not a foregone conclusion. You're causing them to go do it. When you present your solutions as perfect, you're forcing them to go do 61% more work. And when we do that, a lot of times that journey becomes overwhelming and the customer chooses the status quo. Why? Because they're information overloaded. When you do the homework for the buyer, you build trust, but you save time and you end up tipping the scales back towards, I want to work with these people. All right. Because you've done the homework for them, you get quicker deals. All right. And then just remember that last point. Your responsibility is to help the buyer predict. Your job is not to convince anybody of anything. It's 2022. It's not 1726. All right. Remember, we buy when we can predict, not when we are convinced. And we all know subconsciously that perfection does not exist. And when you lead with transparency, I'm telling you, there is magic in that. All right. So what do you think, Helga? I mean, I could talk for days.
Oh, I could listen. I could listen for days. There's a question I want to throw at you. Now, you blew our minds with being transparent and leading with transparency. And, you talked a lot around the, initiating sales conversations, but you actually also delve very deep into every single stage of the selling process. And it is possible to apply this transparency across every single stage. Can you talk to us a little bit about that, please?
Yeah, I mean, the one that'll blow your mind, all right, if you've got a seatbelt, put it on, is negotiating, right? I mean, you can literally apply it throughout the whole process, right? As Rajiv talks about the last one, your formal presentation. So it's your initial messaging and positioning, your prospecting, your formal presenting. Let's talk about negotiating for a second. I always thought it was weird growing up in sales that I needed a different personality to sell than I did to negotiate, right? Like, I don't know if you feel that, but it's like, I'm building trust. I'm an advisor. I'm a consultant to you. And then the customer says, yes, Helga, I'm ready to buy. And you're like, subconsciously, I'm going to start lying to you now. I'm not going to tell you what a good deal is. I read a book about, like, I've got something called BANTNA or whatever. I learned, and by the way, I learned all of my negotiating techniques from former FBI hostage negotiators. What? Like, you're not negotiating the release of hostages from a bank heist. You don't get to tase the person after they've bought and dragged into jail. You've got to build a relationship with these people where they buy, they stay, they buy more, and they advocate. And so transparency in negotiation is simple. You and your company and every for-profit company in the world, you care about four things: how much they buy, how fast they pay, how long they commit, when they sign. That's what your pricing model's based on. It's probably what your compensation model's based on. Buy more, pay fast, commit longer, and then you got quotas, right? Quarterly quotas, right? So there's that. It's exactly the same on their end. Whatever they're selling, it's the same for. Your pricing model is based on that. You lead with it. You lead with it early. When they ask about what your pricing model looks like, you can lead with this idea of, hey, listen, our pricing model is based on volume, right? So how much you buy. In your case, it's going to be, let's say it's licenses or it's locations or it's products or whatever. And the pricing is based on net 30 annual upfront and a minimum of a 1-year commitment. When you propose the deal, you do the same thing, right? You make sure that it's outlined that, hey, you've earned a volume discount based on X, and it's net 30 upfront payments, annual commitment. When the negotiation comes and they're asking for discounts, you lay out all four, right? And it becomes super easy. Just like, all right, you need 20% off. Cool. I understand. Let's talk about it. Hey, maybe we can help you get there. Number one, volume. We can pay you in the form of a discount to commit to more. We could pay you in the form of a discount to pay faster. We can pay you in the form of a discount to commit longer. We can pay you in the form of a discount to help us predict our business because there's value if you're willing to mutually align around that. Now, one caveat to that, or not really, it's not even a caveat. The other piece of transparency around that is how, I don't know about you, but when I grew up in sales, they always told us, don't share the price until the end, right? And the old quote is, don't share the price until they think it's more. That's terrible. I'm a believer in the idea that the term sticker shock has never been associated with anything good in the history of humankind. And that if you can go into a discussion and go, hey, listen, before we get too deep into this, based on our understanding of your environment and what you're trying to achieve, the price is probably going to be between X and Y. If that's going to be trouble, we're going to get real specific along the way, and there might be curveballs we don't see. But if we're way off, can we talk about that now? Because ultimately, if you're selling a 6-figure solution to a 4-figure buyer, one of you is in the wrong discussion. You want to find that out now, or vice versa. You're selling a 4-figure solution to a 6-figure buyer. One of you is in the wrong discussion. Figure it out now, right? That's transparency throughout the whole process. And it applies to renewals and upsells. If you're in that kind of environment, it applies to leadership. It applies to interviews, due diligence, going out and getting extra rounds of funding. Like, transparency begets transparency in all walks of life. And it is what triggers decisions and triggers trust. That might have been a longer answer than you were expecting, but I can rant about it all day long.
No. And honestly, we could have gone into this specificity with every single other stage. I think one great thing to remember, and people can always go back to the books, in fact, because there is one specifically for sales leaders. That's the one for all of us mere mortals, and that's for sales leaders. and they're wonderful guides. I mean, I feel guided because this conversation that you just had here about the sales conversation and the negotiation side of the stages, you actually apply that as well to presentations, to converting into closed business, to even after that. I mean, it's just tremendous. And I just wanted to just make a little comment here, just so that you get a little bit of feedback. One of our participants, thank you, Jose, was saying, wonderful insights by Todd Caponi, makes all sense. I mean, does it take, we've got 5 minutes. Does it take a certain, what kind of shift in terms of our personality, in terms of our confidence? Because, you know, you read the book, like I've got bags of confidence. I read the book, I read the books, and I was like, right, I'm going to apply this. I'm going to try this, right? But if you haven't done this before, or if you're a sales leader that's just trying to say and trying to coach your team into adopting this kind of approach, because yes, there is a fine line, right? There is a fine line between, you know, you sounding professional and coming across professional and completely blowing it. So what can we do? How can we prepare?
All right, so let's start with leaders. So if you're a leader, there was another old school thing that I did wrong when I was in leadership too. And it was this idea of, at all times, I need all of you reps to have 4x your quota in pipeline, right? Like this whole pipeline load conversation. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was this thing that was like, hey, if your quota is $100,000, you better have $400,000 worth of pipeline if you're going to hit that. And we would measure to it. And so what would reps do? They would fill their quota with 4x filled with crap, right? With garbage, because they didn't want to get yelled at for not having enough stuff in there. And as a result, we were working deals too long. And that, why can't we take a step back and go, all right, why is it 4x? Can it be 2x? Can we get better at qualifying in and out early so that we are, instead of wasting 75% of our time, we're only wasting 25% of our time? So like, I think it starts there with making sure that your team has the rope, or whatever you want to call it, to be able to qualify out early by embracing what you don't do. That starts with leadership and the culture you create. And leaders, one other thing that I would start measuring is how long, when you lose a deal, how long is it taking you to lose it? Your time to loss is a really important element. That if it's taking you 3 months, 6 months, 9 months to lose, why? What can we learn from that so that we can accelerate losing those opportunities to the beginning? So that's the leadership side. Let's go to the rep side for all of you that are individual contributors. I know that, like, if you've got an empty pipeline, you get that lead in from a company and you're just like, wow, that's a great one. Oh, this is awesome. And then you immediately get into the discussion and figure out, crap, this is not a good alignment, right? Like, this is not going to work out. What do? I got an empty pipeline. I got a great lead. Most of us internally are going to be like, no, I want to grab onto this one. I'm going to figure it out, right? I would argue that when you embrace transparency, you become so endearing to that customer that oftentimes they either refer you to somebody else in the organization, or they refer you to somebody outside of the organization, or they figure out what you're great at. Here's a quick story. So what I do.
I do know, I'm being told that we're going to have to wrap this up. This is honestly, this is crazy. I wanted to hear you speak like forever. Please, colleagues, friends out there, please reach out to Todd. I've had the opportunity to speak with you, Todd, quite a few times. Every single time, you just blow my mind.
Thank you.
But just a few comments here from our audience here. They've been coming through. What a ride, Todd. Thank you for your storytelling, Andrea Martins. This intervention is very interesting. I really liked it. Sandra Borges. Thank you, Todd, for your wonderful presentation. Inês Figueiredo. Thank you, Todd. Eduardo Oliveira. For a small company, having to travel to meet with a client might be a big cost, By talking about expectations, price range, other considerations, we can separate what matters and what doesn't.
Yes.
Makes complete sense. Katerina Bastos, yes, I agree about the cycle time to lose, but I also think it's important to measure the cycle time to win. In some B2B businesses, cycle time is critical. Thank you so much for your comments. This has been an unbelievable ride, an unbelievable journey today. I'm going to bring Rajiv back in, but not without proper thanking you, Todd. You are a gentleman. You are a star. Honestly, the wisdom that pours out of your pores just leaves me shaking. Please, you are welcome in Sales Shaker anytime. We love you. We want to hear more about you. Please pick up his book, go to the virtual platform, to the village. We're all connecting in the lounge. You literally, this is a 360-degree navigation, you all, which means that when you step out of the auditorium, you can turn around and literally knock on the door of the lounge, and you could be meeting people face to face. You've got connections here to make. There's over 550 contacts here. Please reach out to them, give them a little nudge and connect with them. Todd, you have been amazing. No short of a lie. Thank you so much.
Oh, thanks for having me.